Hello, everyone, and welcome back to week 10 of Sonder's mini-series Readings from a Post-Lockdown World. Thank you so much for watching with us so far. I hope you've been enjoying it. There's only one or two episodes left, so stick with. This week we have a reading from David Deady, who has been published in both issue 1 and 2 of Sonder magazine because he's great. So David is a copywriter who works in Dublin City. He has an MA in American Literature and Film from UCC and has had work published in Sonder issue 1 and 2. The Huffington Post and other online media outlets. He loves pop culture and is currently trying to justify writing another think piece about Sophie Ellis Bextor. So welcome, David.
There, my name is David Deady and I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a short story I've written called It's Not Magic. Anna huddled underneath her umbrella at the bus stop, counting the droplets as they carelessly slipped off the saturated material to the ground. It was dark now and her father was almost certainly late. Perhaps the bus had been held up because of the weather. It was hard to know, though. The regional services were always so unreliable. Seconds crawled as minutes dragged themselves forward by their fingernails, each car dashing Anna's rising hopes as they passed by in a burst of promising light. It was a calm night except for the rain, which seemed never-ending since it had arrived just before the final school bell had tolled. An ominous red sky in the morning had divined of a torrent before long, and she'd seen her father's umbrella left idle in the stand when she got home. He'd lecture her about being out in such awful weather, but it didn't matter. He'd have done the same for her. She shuffled uncomfortably, trying to keep herself as dry as possible, but it was a fruitless effort. Her uniform was soaked through, and the yellow raincoat she wore, seasons later than all the other girls in her class, was doing little to shield her from the deluge. She'd stoked the fire before she left, so at least she knew that warmth was not long away. Fumbling for her phone, she swiped at the screen to see if her dad had messaged, but there were no notifications. He'd rarely be inclined to send texts anyway. She stuffed it back in her pocket and sighed, watching as newly fallen leaves bobbed up and down like tiny boats on a trickling stream that had breached the road. More cars drove by in a blaze, spraying up mists on the meandering country roads. Anna was beginning to worry now, but before the feeling could really set in, another brilliant beam illuminated the sodden tarmac, and thankfully the old city bus followed it, breaking the gentle silence with the splutter of its ancient engine. Stopping just where Anna was perched in her wellies, the door heaved itself open. "Are you getting on?" The bus driver craned his neck, beckoning Anna in. "Oh, no, I was waiting for my father. Is no one getting off?" She lifted herself up on her tiptoes to try to see if a figure was moving behind the clouded glass. "Doesn't look like a kid. Maybe he's on the late bus. It should be here in an hour or so." With that, the hydraulics hissed, slamming the door shut before the bus set off into the night, leaving Anna alone once again. Quickly scrolling to find his number, Anna called her father. 5, 6, 7 rings, no answer. She tried again and nothing. Messages were fired off in quick succession. "Hey Dad, I'm at the stop. Did you miss the bus? Where are you? Can you give me a call?" Pacing back and forward, Anna wondered what to do next. She was about to abandon her post and set off home when, from across the road, she saw an old woman shuffling towards her, wearing a plastic headscarf and an unassuming anorak, which fell to her ankles. She clutched a small bag to her chest, trying to protect it from the rain. She stood a few feet away, wordlessly facing the road. Anna looked down at her father's umbrella, balanced out in front. Would you like to use this? I brought it for my father, but he wasn't on that last bus. It just drove by. You're more than welcome to it." Anna held out the umbrella, but the woman didn't motion for it. Instead, she laughed. "Don't worry, dear. I have my own." She motioned up to the seemingly empty space overhead. It took Anna a second as she grappled with what the woman had gestured to, but suddenly she became completely aware as she spied raindrops bewilderingly bouncing off the invisible dome above the woman. She blinked, not trusting her eyes, but there was no deception. "I've always hated umbrellas," the woman said, turning now to face Anna, her coat completely dry. "Such fickle instruments. Even with a whisper of wind, they lose the run of themselves and take off. This is much more civilized, wouldn't you agree?" Anna couldn't talk. The air now seemed to thicken around her as sound vanished and time skulked to a stop. She could only stare, riveted to the spot as the old woman just smiled on, unaware of her own peculiarity. "But thank you for offering," she continued. "So few your age would have such manners. Are you all right, dear? It's very late to be out here alone." My father," it was all she could manage. Thoughts that she should run dashed through her mind, But she didn't necessarily feel in danger either, just uneasy and astonished. She was just an old woman after all, wasn't she? Yes, the woman said, clasping her hands together. Well, why don't we have a little look-see? With one quick movement of her finger over a puddle that lay at her feet, it began to glow, iridescent at first, as colours merged and danced across the murky water. Oh, she exclaimed, he was on the bus after all, just asleep. Poor thing, come closer, child, take a look. Anna edged slowly over to the swirling pool and gasped. There he was, his head leaning gently against the frosted window, moving in tandem with each bump and jerk, completely oblivious to all. Let's wake him up, shall we, before he trundles off too far. The woman prodded the air with her bony finger, and sure enough, her father startled awake, as if he'd been poked hard in the back. Anna watched as he began to scramble to his feet, scooping up his jacket and bag, when he became aware that he had missed his stop, before the water rippled and returned to its original inconspicuous state. Who are you? How did you do that? Anna tentatively found her way back to reality, rounding on the woman, steeled for answers. I've been called many things over the course of my lifetime, the woman sighed. Cursed, blessed, witch, but I just go by Maeve these days. And that's it. Thank you so much. Bye.